Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
It's all working. I'm just going to leave it up, Randy. All right. Hey, Ed, you can see Kevin Black, right? Can you ask him to say something? Can you hear me?
Kevin, can you say something?
Yeah. Nope, we got rid of the echo. It's all working. Test. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. That's his computer. That's not the webinar version. We're good.
Test.
Let Sharonda take her seat. And we'll have fun. Thank you.
Flexible.
Good to see you,
If
man.
you don't mind, that would be great. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. We're very excited and appreciative that you have joined us for the Boston Venture Post-Pandemic webinar and live in-person session, graciously sponsored by Qodeo. We have a robust agenda that is being done in person as well as live streamed on Zoom and YouTube. And to start us off, I'd like to introduce Senior Associate Dean for the Questrom School of Business, Dr. Barbara Bickert, to provide opening remarks. Dr. Bickert.
Thank you, Greg. On behalf of the Questrom School of Business, I am thrilled to welcome you all to the Boston Venture post-pandemic. It's great to see some of you guys here in person, and as well as so many people who are joining virtually. This project is a valuable collaboration between the Questrom School of Business MBA program and Qodeo. An important part of the MBA learning experience is the opportunity to take what you've learned in the classroom and apply it in a real-world setting. And this collaboration provides our MBA students with that opportunity to really grapple with ambiguity, to learn how to conduct research in all the messiness that comes with that, and then to prepare a report that's targeted toward a very specific audience and to do both a written and oral presentation. Those are skills that are hard sometimes to teach in the classroom. So having this opportunity to work with Qodeo and to partner with them on this is super valuable to us. So therefore, we really appreciate Simon Glass and Qodeo for providing our students with this opportunity to gain this hands-on experience and to learn about the Boston venture capital community. This is our second year participating in this event. We had 2 students last year, I think one is here, and we're up to 5 students participating this year. So really giving a lot of students a valuable experience. So very much thank you to Simon and Qodeo for providing this opportunity. To make this action learning possible, students need guidance and they need feedback. So I also want to thank Professor Greg Stoller for being the coach of the team and also for just making this opportunity possible as well, for making the connection. I know that the students value his input and his guidance as they've gone through and conducted this research. And I'm also providing feedback is our panel of experts, Caleb, Ben, and Sharonda. Thank you guys so much for being here. Oh, and Ben, I'm sorry. And thank you guys so much for being here as well. And finally, and most important, thank you to the 5 students who conducted the research and who you will be hearing from today. They come from both our part-time and our full-time MBA programs. They are working full-time or they are taking a full load of classes and participating in a bunch of activities. And so this is something they're doing on top of everything else, and really, really impressive that they were able to take that on. So Ahab, Fawn, Chris, Siobhan, and Ivy, who's not here today, thank you for your hard work in conducting this research and preparing the report. And we all look forward to hearing your insights today. So with that, I'll say thank you. I'll turn it back to Greg and just say enjoy the session. I think it's going to be super interesting and insightful and valuable. So enjoy.
Okay, so I just want to quickly go over our agenda for this morning in the Eastern time zone. We're shortly going to have opening remarks by Qodeo CEO Simon Glass. Then our MBA team is going to present the results of their research. At that point, Monica is going to talk about data and social media at Qodeo, and then I will introduce our panelists, and we will have a panel discussion. I've known each of the people on the panel, in addition to Kevin Blackman, who's joining us virtually, and we're looking forward to a good afternoon. I will turn things over to Qodeo CEO Simon Glass. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll probably sit here for ease. So thank you all for joining us. We have many tens of people internationally, from Tel Aviv to Tokyo to London to the West Coast of the US, joining us virtually, as well as people here in person in Boston. I'd like to thank Greg Stoller, Professor Greg Stoller, the Dean, Associate Dean, and others here at BU for our ongoing collaboration with them. This is our second year of collaboration with BU. And as part of how Qodeo gathers data, which drives our system to create matches between entrepreneurs and venture and private equity firms, an integral part of it is having MBA students go and interview venture and private equity folks in the field to get qualitative as well as quantitative information to understand how the industry works, which then makes matches occur. I'll tell you a little bit about the Qodeo solution. If we can just tell you briefly, and then we're going to show you a short video, and then we're going to go into the panelists, these speakers who will be the MBA team who actually did the research this time. We've released a report today, which everybody who is in attendance, both virtually and in person, will get a copy of, which actually summarizes the presentation we see today. But you'll hear it firsthand from the students who've actually presented. So we're just going to go on to the next slide, if that's okay, to the Qodeo solution. So basically what Qodeo does is we were founded originally looking at trying to find different kinds of data that the private equity or venture industry needed. And it turned out that most entrepreneurs want to raise money. They don't want to sort of delve into data. Most VC and PE firms want to get inbound deal flow that's filtered. And they also don't want to deal with unfiltered data effectively. So we found that data is actually not what people want, but actually what they want is solutions. So what Qodeo set about doing was to create a solution whereby, as a first part of the fundraising process, identifying who you should speak to and when, both from the venture perspective, in terms of how they deploy funds to entrepreneurs, and from the entrepreneur perspective, in terms of how they deploy funds, how they're seeking funds from those venture firms. So if entrepreneurs can identify who their shortlists are, who they should speak to and when, that is far more valuable than trying to waste time delving through data and speaking to the wrong people at the wrong time. So we created algorithms that leverage the data we collect, including through work with our 30 business school partners and other forms of data, automatically goes through algorithms and automatically serves our entrepreneurs on a platform with shortlisted funding matches, so they can choose who to go to and when. And then there's also some messaging capability which we're enhancing this year, which enables them to be put in touch with the venture firms. That's the first part of the process, as far as entrepreneurs are concerned, is who to even speak to. We like it sort of kissing frogs, almost in the dating analogy, that when you're going to go out and date, you go and talk to the right people at the right time. You don't go and try and date somebody who's already seeing somebody. And similarly, if the venture firm's funds are already deployed, you don't go and talk to them at that particular time. So there's a lot of nuance about how to understand who to talk to and when in the venture space from the entrepreneur's perspective. And what we do is do that automatically for you as an entrepreneur. And from only $9.95 per month. But in fact, everybody today who's in attendance today is able to get 50% off, which with a special voucher, Wow Qodeo, which gives you 50% off an annual for concierge subscription, which is an enhanced version of our entrepreneur service, which enables entrepreneurs not only to identify who to speak to and when from the venture perspective, but also we help enhance their profiles so that they are as matchable as possible in the right shape to then go and talk to VCs. And likewise, for VCs, we create automated shortlists for them. So we save people a lot of money in the time process. We're going to show you a short video now, which hopefully will work seamlessly. And after the short video, we'll turn it over to the MBA team in question, who we're so delighted to work with this year. Just before we go into that, there are three themes that the MBA team looked at this year in the Boston market, and the Northeast region market in the US, which is a critical market to Qodeo. The team looked at biotech and pharma, fintech and services, and the increasingly important issue of diversity, and that's obviously sits across the whole space. We're going to show you our video now, and then we're going to hand over to the team to present, and the team will present to the podium, if that's okay. And then after that talk, then we'll then have a few minutes, little brief talk by Monica about something, Monica from our team, and then we'll hand over to the panel to discuss with Greg as MC what themes have been seen in the local market. So if we can turn over to the video now, that'd be great. Thanks.
I just want to make sure I'm coordinating with my tech team. Are we good to go on the video? Great.
quoted your Caleb there from a previous event. So thanks very much for watching the video. That's available on our website. There's a demo also for the VCs, so they can see from the flip side what they get. I hope everybody here could hear it at that time. In fact, we actually now got over 6,200 VCs now on the platform, and the time the video was made only a few months ago, we had 1,800. So it's got about a third of VCs globally in some kind of way covered on the platform. Okay, what we're going to try and do, if that's okay now, Greg, is to hand over to the MBA team.
Yes.
And have them present their findings and what's happened to Boston. So there was a previous report put out, one of the MBAs from our previous project, David Landsman's here today, had a fantastic team with him and Malav in 2020, the heart of the pandemic. They went out and spoke to loads of VC and P firms in the Boston market and saw the trends at the time. And what they saw was that Boston VCs were seeking horses, not unicorns. In other words, there was a kind of an expectation management, which is slightly different to the Silicon Valley space. It's one of the key takeaways. That report's also available. But today, we're going to see where Boston has come to in the last 18 months post that previous project. So if I can call Greg, please, then call up the team. We'll have the MBA team. Hopefully Greg can introduce them, and they'll then go through the themes they saw in the Boston market, and we'll come back to the panel. Thank you very much.
Are we good on the video? We're trying to go in sync. Are we good, Monica? What did you say? Okay, no problem. We just want to make sure the video is getting recorded, Simon. We're up to a lot of people online who are viewing this. It's actually quite amazing. So I just want to make sure they're getting the full experience. So hold on.
Yeah, we have people in Tokyo, Tel Aviv, London.
Ed, if you want, you can also go through the Zoom webinar and share screen and do the video in that fashion. Just take a couple of minutes.
Did you realize the average on
And what we'll probably do after the event is at the close, we may show there's a Qodeo video about our story, which tells you more about the background of the business, which we may show afterwards, subject to timing. This is a switch over now between online and offline.
At this point, I would like to introduce our 5 Rockstar MBAs. They've been phenomenal to work with starting in September when we did this during orientation. Before I invite them up to the podium to deliver their report, I first want to introduce them by name in no particular order. Siobhan Bauer, Ihab Marab, Ivy Yu Zhang, who is at work today, Chris Zhang, Fan Xia, and that is our team. David Landsman is also here personally. Thank you for showing up. His partner for this a couple of years ago was Majuska, and we wouldn't be here without your hard work. So thanks to ultimately the 7 of you for everything that you've done. At this point, I will turn it over to this year's team of Ivy, Siobhan, Ehab, Chris, and Fan, and take it away. Come on.
Perhaps the team wants to stand by the side, so it's easy to sort of segue between presenters.
Thank you, Greg. It is my great honor and pleasure to be here to share the key takeaways as well as the thinking thought of this program. I was just thrilled to join this team. It's a dream team. So back in my experience, actually, I have worked in industry that is mostly B2B. So actually, the industry we focus on is healthcare and also biotech. It's a new industry for me, but luckily, it's a pillar industry in Boston area. So in interview, the venture capitalists from 3 rocks and also CapEx, we found out that VC's insightful view on how they evaluate the companies is basically focused on their industrial and disruptive technologies in this area, and also like their team expertise. So back in my understanding about how VC evaluates the portfolio companies in my internship, I would firstly prioritize teams. But based on our interview, we found out that the disruptive technology and how the scientific knowledge to change the world is what the VC and venture capital we interviewed mostly prioritize. So second thing is for the team, the venture capitalists we interviewed, they would evaluate on their patent and market research and also like the research and development capabilities. So what they value is the real knowledge, real technology, as well as the real capability to change the world. Again, I feel so thrilled to join this team to let me know about the venture capital market as well as the insightful knowledge from the venture capitalists in Boston in healthcare. And in the future trend, actually, this area is moving to the digital medical care and healthcare. I'm looking forward to the future and see if anything in the digitalized world can change the world. Thank you.
Perhaps we can have the next slide also, which shows we've got some seismic outtakes here from that particular part of the project, and there was some data on how Boston is reclaiming the biotech investment crown. It might be a good one to show as well. Investment sizes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone here and online. So my name is Ihab Murad. I'm a business student, part-time in the institute, and I'm also a partner at S&M Product Management Company. And recently, I just launched my tech startup, and I'm honored to work with Greg as his credit assistant and with all the team. Okay, thank you so much, Simon, for the opportunity. Thank you so much, our attendees. So I've always been interested in the fintech sector, and now when we started this project, I talked to Simon if we can meet with VCs that works or invest in the fintech area, get their insights on how they evaluate investment, how they open the tickets, for how long do they stay with the company, how they do their exits, what's their strategy with the full-time apps, okay, or with the down-time apps, how they see the future of the fintech area in Boston. So luckily, Boston has more than 35 colleges and universities. The state itself has 350 estimated number of fintech firms, and that takes us to the second step, where the state wants to be a global provider for the fintech services. When you look at the report, when you read through the report, you will see that 35% of the fintech, or sorry, of the deals that closed by these startup, these VCs were fintech focused. Okay, so that tells us if you are evaluating a startup, what you're looking at. When we asked VCs, the most thing that they mentioned to us that you need to know if this is a real entrepreneur or just someone who wants to be on the show. They are gonna stand for you, or they will panic once they run out of the money. And that will take us to a strategic direction that they are planning to go with this startups. For how long they are going to stay? Is it just as quick as 3 months, or they are going to last with them for 10 years? We have different types of VCs that we interviewed. We interviewed corporate VCs, we interviewed institutional VCs. We also couldn't do this without having insights from incubators, from advisors, okay, in order to have a full picture of the whole scene in the fintech, okay? When we talk to them, we learn it, the growing trend in the exit. Okay, they said that as far as we are watching, it's growing more into the SPAC and merging and acquisition more than the traditional IPO. Some startups said that some VCs said that we might just do an exit as quick as 3 months. Okay, others said that we are average of 5 months. Okay, depending on our strategy. One of the corporate VCs said that we are strategic. We look at the startup as we are raising them, so we might last with them for 10 years. We actually do business development, and that takes us to the actual IRR that we are looking to achieve. One vice president at VC mentioned that well, I'm always aiming to have 40, but 35 is not bad. And we are all salesmen. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm doing my pitch deck to my venture collective. When you look at other factors that they are considering and why it's getting quicker to have a very quick exit, we asked it for their insights on that. They mentioned that it's way easier now to start business. So some startups looking for exits even before having revenue, and some VCs and investors looking for that as well, not just startups. So if there's any entrepreneur, look for that VCs who might look for 3 months of exit. Okay, that would be so much way to be rich. And when you look at the hot sectors and how they're looking at the exits, not all of them achieved. Sorry. Now it's better? Okay. So not all of them achieved the unicorn milestone. I got the way is better? Okay. Not all of them achieved the unicorn stage, but they are still hunting it. Okay. But when we asked them about the challenges, they said we are trying to be now more open, especially when it comes to diversity. The VC is a male industry, mainly white, but we are doing our part. We are trying to look for further diversity, because the more you have diversity, the more or the higher probability you will be successful. Thank you so much for this, and I will give it to Shafan.
Nice job, Ehab, and nice job, Chris.
Thank you for the nice segue there, Ehab, into the diversity and social impact. My name is Siobhan Bauer, and I'm a first year in the dual health sector MBA and Master's in Public Health program. And I'm really excited to talk about the research that I done about the social impact landscape and the diversity landscape here in DC. So some of the leading questions I had going into this research was, how is social impact and diversity kind of thought of by different VCs in the space? How firms are approaching getting deal flow in this area, and what is really pushing this trend to be kind of more ubiquitous and not just kind of the du jour thing happening. So it was pretty quick right off the bat that social impact is defined very broadly. You know, I think there's in two categories. There are firms that are investing in companies that are addressing social impact, whether it's environmental challenges, renewable energy, economic development, education efforts. But then there's also a really concerted effort right now to bring diversity into the mix. Oh, and there we go, slide. And to make sure that money is being invested in underrepresented founders and people who traditionally have not been brought to the table. So one of the firms that I spoke with, a large financial institution, had earmarked 200 million of their own money towards social impact. 20 million of that they wanted to direct toward women and minority-led businesses, and 50 million of that was earmarked for their Black entrepreneurs investment initiative. And I think just having these large institutions kind of lead the way in that space is something that's really exciting and hopefully will trickle down. One of the challenges in this space is kind of breaking down this exclusive network idea that you have to be part of these kind of elite networks that traditionally are white and male, that are leaving out a lot of people. And I think a platform like Qodeo is exciting because it's creating an opportunity to connect these people that might not have a Rolodex full of founder or funders that they can go to right away. And on that topic of deal flow, the firms that I spoke to have taken on a couple of strategies to make sure that they're reaching out and connecting with some of these founders, whether that is opening kind of inbound requests, almost like calls for proposals, whether it's putting their own staff members in communities in regional areas in the US that aren't being funded necessarily, and kind of finding networking opportunities, whether it is conferences for different colleges or different groups where they can meet these founders where they are. And looking forward, you know, what is pushing this trend? The VCs that I spoke to really said that this pressure to focus on diverse funders and focus on social impact is coming from the people funding them. I think people are really wanting to see that their money is bringing them both financial success and making some good mark on the world. And one of the opportunities here and one of the challenges we see is how we're going to capture this social and this impact in a way that is relevant to the investment and the investors. You know, we have very clear ways to measure financial success of an investment, but capturing the social impact can be a little more difficult in a way that is not feeling purely philanthropic, but that is really seeing that we're having some financial impact. I think this is a trend that we're going to see continue to grow. And like Ehab said, this is not just in social impact firms. This is all firms that are becoming very mindful about wanting diversity to be kind of centered to their firms. Now off to Greg. Thank you.
It's really quite exciting, not only knowing the countries that are dialing in today via our virtual opportunity. On our team here at Questrom, we've got 2 students from China, we've got 1 student from Egypt, we've got another student of Asian descent. I'm not sure, I think Ivy's also from mainland China. Siobhan is from the United States. On our panel, we have people from all over different walks of life. I'd like to next introduce Monica Majuska. Monica is a dual citizen of the UK and Poland, so the international trend is continuing. Monica, why don't you come on up to the podium and introduce yourself, please, and provide your remarks before we segue to the panel. So.
Thank you, Greg. I'm Monica. I'm the data and social media manager here at Qodeo. As Greg mentioned, I am of Polish and British descent, and I thought it would be very important to discuss the Ukraine crisis that's going on right now. I live between England and Poland, so I'm very close to I'm close to the border. So I wanted to just say that there are so many ways that people can help. And if you're not by the border, if you're not in Poland, if you're here in the United States, you can really do so much to help. There are so many organizations, and just donate whatever you can, money-wise, or if you can donate food or military equipment, anything. These things are really needed. So, yeah, so I think that's what I wanted to mention. I wanted to thank Simon for giving me the time off to actually go and volunteer in Warsaw as well as by the border. So thank you so much. And off to the panel.
Yeah, so we wanted to thank Monica. So Monica is out with our team. She's in Europe, but she's come here for the week to help with this event and other activities here. And we decided with her that she could spend some work time to go and actually help some of the refugees, and particularly some women refugees. And she went to the border, so anybody who's interested in actually connecting with Monica can tell you that those experiences, which sounded heartfelt, and also the Warsaw train station where we were trying to sort of be directed back and forth. And it affects us in the tech world because an awful lot of tech businesses have been based in Ukraine, and an awful lot of the tech workers in Ukraine were women workers also. So they've all been displaced, and people have had various initiatives to try and help them out. The Red Cross is one of the main organizations you can donate to help with what's going on there. Hopefully not too many of you have spare military equipment to donate right now. Just quickly on the, we had the Qodeo blog before, just was posted. So if you want to learn more about what Qodeo does, you can please sign up to Qodeo, Qodeo.com. They say there's Wow Qodeo gives you 50% off to go into the system as an entrepreneur. We're actually free to VC and private equity firms, not because we think VC and people are cheap, even though I worked in the industry myself before, but because we want to make sure there's as much co-option as possible from the VC community in to look at inbound deal flow for entrepreneurs. And we're for only $9.95 per month for entrepreneurs. Talking to the diversity angle, there was a very interesting post put up on our blog. So if you go to Qodeo.com/blog, there's a blog with various insights about how to raise money, about insights about what VCs are looking for, and also about issues to do with diversity. And there's a fascinating blog put up 2-3 days ago by Stefan Fuzzi, who's at Duke University, one of our other research partners here in the US, who is an African-American guy who runs the innovation unit at the Fuqua School at Duke University, talking about how African-American entrepreneurs have faced barriers to access. And one of the things we try to do in Qodeo is by being agnostic as a platform, we can get people who can flatten those barriers that people who don't historically have relationships from top schools like this or from sort of prior networks can actually find ways to get into the VC community, which has always historically been a problem for the entrepreneurs. And by the same point, when VCs have invested into entrepreneurs, what you often find is that they invest into people like them. And there was actually a study done by a couple of Harvard business professors with Josh Lerner, who's over at Harvard Business School on our advisory board, that's over the river here. And a couple of his colleagues wrote an article showing how when VCs invest in people like themselves, they get lower returns, because people tend to have groupthink effectively in how they make decisions. And so diversity not only is important from its own perspective, but it's important for returns, and that's for LPs. So if we can now turn over to Greg, And Greg, who is this illustrious professor here at BU, is also an amazing MC. And Greg now MCs our panel and maybe introduces our panel, and the panel can say a bit about their backgrounds, and we talk about some of the themes we've just seen. And so then sort of try to wrap by about 1:30 East Coast time here.
Great, thank you very much,
there's
Simon.
free food and stuff
I'd like to
provided
start
by-
off by having each panelist introduce themselves. We apologize for some of the technical challenges we're running into. For anyone listening to this online, we are using a combination of Zoom, YouTube, people in person, and a webinar, so just bear with us. Let's start with Kevin Blackman, just because he's joining us online. Kevin, if you could introduce yourself, please. We have your picture and your live video showing in the presentation room, but we also want people online to be able to hear from you as well. Great, thank you. Vis-a-vis the people on the panel, I know who are here in person. I know each of them quite well. In fact, I go back with Sharonda was a former student of mine. Ben and Caleb and I easily go back more than 10, perhaps 15 years, etc. Let's start with Sharonda White so she can introduce herself.
Great.
Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharonda White. I am question class of 2018. I was a social impact MBA student with a concentration in entrepreneurship. I am the co-founder of Cupcake Therapy, which is a premium nut-free allergy-friendly cupcake company. And I'm also founder and CEO of Qodeo, which is a platform that helps students and their families to better understand the true cost of college and how to pay for it. I actually launched Qodeo during my second year at Questrom.
And Sharonda was very generous to use her company as a case competition for our incoming MBA students, and everyone got a huge amount out of it, as did I. Ben Littauer.
Thank you very much. First, I want to commend Monica for all of the efforts with what's a defining moment in our history. And I really appreciate you bringing that up today. I'm Ben Littauer. I'm an angel investor since 2008, invested in over 50 companies to date. It used to be, I'm always been a small investor with a big mouth, which is why Greg likes me. I used to say as an angel, I didn't have to have a thesis, but over the past 2 years through the pandemic and the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter and the general visibility of social inequities in our society, especially in the US, I now have a thesis is that my small amount of money has to do some good. So I'm no longer investing in Facebook marketing schemes, which have played very well, but I don't see that as a social good. So that's where I am. I'm happy to talk more about it as Greg sends questions our way.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, someone who I have a huge amount of respect for, who's been a major volunteer of mine, as I said, going back over a decade, Caleb Winter.
Good afternoon. I am Managing Director at the Memorial Care Innovation Fund. It's a corporate venture group. My partner and I manage about $150 million of evergreen capital focused on healthcare IT and digital health. It's a really wonderful place to be working at the intersection of healthcare and venture capital. We are able to invest in companies that are really helping to solve problems, from lack of access to behavioral health. A company we were invested in called Silver Cloud, which rapidly expanded access while reducing the cost of behavioral health therapy for people all around the world. We also are investors in companies like Baby Scripts, which are helping close some of the gaps in care. We talked a little bit about DEI and health equity. Well, Black women are 4 times more likely to die of childbirth, and Baby Scripts is working to try to solve those problems. So it's a very exciting place to work. We try to do well and do good at the same time.
Thank you very much. I will say we're up to a very large number now online. It's exciting to see the ticker go higher. I would very much encourage everyone to read the report. I didn't write it, so it's not taken across, read my own stuff. Our students did an amazing job which is a perfect segue into a live panel discussion. Kevin, let's start with you just because you're online and we want you to feel completely included. The report stopped right, unfortunately, as the Ukrainian crisis began. How has that changed any investment theses you have, either as a financier or an operator, over the past month or so? Have you made any changes in your own investments, either in light of the volatility of the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange in the past, in quarter number one, or in light of the Ukrainian crisis now in month number two? Great, thank you. The benefit of the panel is that we literally have perspectives from an entrepreneur, an angel, and a VC. We'll start with our entrepreneur in residence. Sharonda, let me ask you the same question. It's been a very sobering Q1, just in terms of return on investment, not to mention now the Ukrainian crisis. You're involved in at least two businesses, knowing you probably a third by the end of 2022. Have you made any changes in the operations of your businesses in light of the volatility or now the Ukrainian crisis?
That's a great question. So we have made, I guess the short answer would be no, we haven't made changes. And I say that because from a supply chain perspective, we have been hit pretty hard. Costs of everything have risen. That's just what it is. We've had to pay our delivery drivers $23 an hour to deliver because gas is so high. I never would have thought we'd be paying that much money to people to drive cupcakes around, but that's just what it is. And so our costs have risen a lot. Our margins were high enough before that we're able to absorb those costs without raising prices. So that is a good thing for us. Our margins were actually very nice before this happened. And so we haven't changed anything operationally just because we're hoping to kind of ride it out. We're hoping that things will eventually subside in terms of pricing. Prices will come down. The supply chain will hopefully get easier. Some of our suppliers have actually closed business. They just shut down. And so we've had to find other suppliers. And so it's been difficult, but we found ways to kind of manage around that. And we're just doing the best we can with what we have.
So metaphorically, and I would not put you on the spot, especially since it's being recorded, if things continue the way they are right now, and let's say Q number two has intense inflation, high prices, high oil prices, et cetera, what would it ultimately be the trigger for you to have to raise prices?
That's a good question. I don't know. We've raised our delivery prices just a little bit just because of the fact that we were already pretty low compared to our competitors. I don't foresee us raising prices anymore. I mean, gas prices have come down a little bit.
Yep.
So that's good. The price of our supplies, our ingredients, it's still high. I don't see it necessarily going any higher. But like I said, I think our margins are enough that we can keep our prices the same, at least for now, and it'll be fine. We have a lot of businesses that buy from us, and so they really don't care. They're spending whatever they need to, and they're making their employees happy, especially I'm talking more so about cupcake therapy. They're paying whatever we're charging. And so that's good. But then the problem is for the individuals who are buying, we don't want the prices to be too high for them. So the companies don't care. If it's B2B, it's fine. But the B2C part of it is where we're trying to be sensitive. On the COS-EDU side, we kind of changed our strategy to a certain extent. Parents weren't as willing to pay for our services, so we focused more on the schools. And the schools and the education organizations are subsidizing our services for the parents, the families that would be interested in paying for our services. And so that's worked out. So we haven't changed our prices. We just changed our strategy in terms of how we're getting people to pay for them.
And for anyone here in person, not only has Sharonda baked cupcakes, but she's also branded them with the Qodeo logo, which is just cool as heck. I think I love it. Let's go on to Ben Littauer. Again, I know everyone's personality so well. That's what makes this so much fun for me. Ben, you mentioned a couple of seconds ago that you are now doing good, making investments that are doing good. Is that something that happened at the end of 2021? Is that something in light of the Ukrainian crisis? What has caused you to pivot? As you get to know Ben, he's described his office as being any coffee shop, and he just loves working with new entrepreneurs and experimenting. And by the way, the man is sharp as hell. He was very active creating the original email standards that we all use thousands of times a day.
So Greg exaggerates my capabilities, but and sadly, coffee shops haven't been on the agenda for a couple of years. No, this quarter and the Ukrainian crisis haven't changed where I was. That happened over the past few years, where the angel VC model is equity based with exits, and I've been researching over the past 3 years, 3.5 years. Revenue-based financing, where the growth rate is not the primary measure, but the profitability is the primary measure, and that seems to be a much more socially valuable approach. Many fewer deaths of companies expected, and more millionaires made and fewer billionaires. But I'm in favor of that in general. I had been sort of on hold for the time I was researching that, and in the end I realized that doing that as an individual wasn't possible, so I did an investment in a fund, and that freed me up to think about equity investing again. So I've been investing in healthcare and in green tech, but also in diverse teams, because all of those I feel are social goods. With regard to what's happening today and this past quarter, it's a little too early to tell. I'm a member of two groups, Walnut Ventures and TBD Angels. Walnut is a small group that invests locally in New England. TBD is a national group that invests in anything, anywhere. TBD has been extremely active over the first quarter, Walnut less so, but we see smaller numbers of deals in general. So it's a little hard to tell. With the financial instability over the first quarter and the global instability right now, it's too early to tell, I think, whether people are going to tighten up their wallets. I'm hoping not, because this is an opportunity time, actually, and I think many of my colleagues think of it that way, and an important time to continue helping build things.
Great, thank you. When Caleb Winder first spoke in my class, he designed from scratch a very interesting graphic that on one axis shows the amount of profit you've received, 2 times your original investment, 10 times your original investment, and on the other axis is years. In the middle is IRR. And as a very successful venture capitalist, he impressed upon our students that a lot of things have to go right if you're investing in multiple companies for you to return to your limited partners an 18 or 20 or 22% return on equity. That has stayed with me, that he first delivered that graphic probably 13 years ago. A lot of things have to go right in his world as a VC, but he's done it time and time again. He's stayed cool under pressure. Caleb, has that rattled your nerves at all in terms of Q1 or the Ukrainian crisis?
I guess a little, but not really. What we've seen for the last couple of years is a really almost unprecedented time in digital health investing. We've seen valuations go through the roof, and fortunately we had a lot of investments in the ground, and so we spent most of the last 18 months selling companies. We've struggled a little bit to get, to win deals, because we haven't been necessarily willing to pay the highest price. But that discipline, we think, is going to now start to pay off. The digital health index, public company index, is down about 70% from its peak in sort of the August, somewhere between August and November, to where it is today. And so we're starting to make the move from harvesting, which we were doing the last couple of years, just doing a couple of new investments in 21, to this year. It looks like we'll probably do 3 to 5 investments, maybe more. So we're pretty excited about the future. There's a lot of great companies. Just the valuations have been out of whack. And so we're seeing the private sector markets will likely come down a little bit, if the public sector markets stay where they are for another couple of quarters, and we're already seeing just a little bit of evidence of that right now. So very excited about the future.
Okay, I'm going to go in reverse order this time, so Caleb doesn't always have to wait until the end. My next question is, we are in the midst of the Great Resignation. We thought it was an aberration a couple of weeks or a couple of months in the summer, then it extended into the fall. Now that we are in April, it hasn't abated at all. It's businesses at all aspects of an ecosystem are struggling to find workers, from the executive ranks all the way down to hourly employees. Caleb, has that impacted your investment thesis in terms of finding qualified people to run these companies that you're investing in?
Well, there's been record investment in digital health, and there are so many new startups out there all vying for the same talent. And talent does not just respond to new money. It takes time. You need to have people going through graduate programs like Questrom. You've got to have people that have real experience to be successful. So the market for talent is really tight. And so we have had to work with entrepreneurs around thinking through the consequences of this market. For example, when we raise capital, we always look at the size of the option pool that would be available for new employees, new hires. And there's often resistance about expanding that option pool because it's dilutive. But we've had to impress upon them the need to, how hard it is to attract talent right now. And so you've got to be very generous. The things that you used to be able to, you have to pay people more money and you have to give them more equity. So we often work with entrepreneurs to get them to understand that, instead of raising 5 million now, maybe you should raise 8. Instead of having a 5% unallocated option pool, maybe we should have 10. We can always get that back, but if you've got a lot of people to hire because you've got great growth plans, you better be prepared to pay up. And we want the best of the best.
Ben, in your either virtual coffee shop sessions or actual coffee shop sessions, you're seeing the passion in entrepreneurs' eyes, and you've seen it for years. Has the current climate dampened that? Are the people you meet with, do they have the same just excitement in taking over the world with their startup that you saw, say, 3 or 4 years ago?
You're saying that entrepreneurs sometimes have stars in their eyes?
Just a little bit.
I have seen nothing to indicate that that's diminished at all. People are still believing in their businesses, in their ideas. My job is sometimes to damp that down a little and say, maybe it's not quite as exciting as all that. Can you think of other ways of getting where you're going that don't require that you go first to me and then to Caleb and then to Sequoia? Because that may be a harder path than some of the others that you can do. Of course, the business schools worldwide, not counting this one, of course, have been putting stars in entrepreneurs' eyes for years, saying the only way to get money is VC, and you have to go big or go home. I think that there are alternatives to that. I think the financial landscape from an investment point of view and from an exits point of view has changed dramatically over the last few years. Everything from regulation crowdfunding to SPACs and reverse mergers have made exits possible. The rise of revenue-based financing as a startup in the investment community, all of these things have changed the landscape sufficiently that looking in one place is no longer the answer. You have to look around for all sorts of different things. And you have to understand that your business will look different depending on the kind of funding you take. So they still have stars in their eyes, but I help to see whether they can reach the nearest star rather than the farthest star.
Well put. Sharonda, as you're envisioning your next business, do you think it's going to run like your other businesses have run, in the sense that you're going to go for a MVP, a minimally viable product, you're going to go out, you're going to talk to customers, you're going to revise that MVP, eventually raise money, and continue moving forward? Sharonda has the benefit that she's worked for foundations before she started companies, and she's worked at several different portions of the United States. But as you're envisioning Venture 3, beyond Cupcake Therapy and beyond Cause EDU, will it look and feel the same to you?
Great question. The answer is I have absolutely no idea. And I say that because with Qodeo, like I said before, we launched while I was at Question. And we started during the Starting New Ventures class. We did the Be New Venture competition. We placed second out of over 100 startups. We did all of the things. We did Mass Challenge. We won that. I mean, we did everything that you say you should do from beginning to end, right? With Cupcake Therapy, that was an accident. That started as a hobby during the pandemic, actually in March of 2020 with Qodeo. We launched our financial education platform on a Tuesday, I think. And an hour after we launched, Harvard announced that they were shutting down and sending all of their students home. By the end of the day, MIT made their announcement. By the end of the week, schools across the country made their announcements. We had contracts that were canceled. We had events that we were supposed to be paid to speak at that were canceled. Everything was canceled. And so, and this was, the very beginning of the pandemic. Nobody knew what was going on. Everything shut down. And so Cupcake Therapy was really kind of a placeholder while things were slow and we were trying to figure out what we were doing with Qodeo, and it just took off. And so we didn't do any of those things. We didn't have a pitch deck. We didn't have a business plan, a lean canvas. We didn't do any of that. It was literally just, we put up a website, it took off. We built a 6-figure business on word of mouth. And then it was, oh, I guess we have a company. And now we're looking at locations and we already have ideas of where we want our first, second, third, and fourth storefront. So it just completely happened by accident. The next business, I can say that we're going to plan things out like we did with Qodeo, but I really don't know.
I love it. Kevin, my question for you is, as viewed through an entrepreneurial lens, what gets you out of bed in the morning and what keeps you up at night? Great, thank you. Ben, I'm going to start with you this time. The last 3 to 5 years have been amazingly successful, no matter what sector you've looked at, whether it be equity, whether it be debt, whether it be private equity, turnarounds. I mean, across the board, we've had a really good run. Would you counsel entrepreneurs who you're meeting with to temper their expectations for 2022 or 2023? Or, as Caleb said, is it business as usual?
I don't think it's business as usual. I think it's business as with a new normal. I think that across the board here, you'll see that companies are looking at the virtual environment as real as this environment that we're sitting in today. That's the new reality. Whether you believe in the metaverse or not is another question, but I think that we are seeing that companies are going to be more virtual, and the support systems for that offer a tremendous amount of opportunity to anybody who looks there. So I think things will be very different from an investment point of view. I think that there's a very significant risk that a lot of the capital will dry up in the next few years. So that speaks for very efficient business or businesses that enable efficiency. And again, the virtual environment is an enabler there. And so I think we will see a significant shift in the kinds of businesses that are successful over the next 3 to 5 years. But there's still going to be an awful lot of businesses started and succeeding.
Caleb, I like how you stated it a few moments ago that you've moved from harvesting to now investing. What are you telling either future entrepreneurs that you're investing in or your limited partners in terms of their IRR expectations over the next, say, I don't know, 2 to 3 years?
Well, there are. I'm we're telling them that we see good opportunity, which we do. We have approaches that can help us mitigate some of the valuation challenges, whether it's using convertible notes. And I've got, from my seat working with the healthcare system, there are a lot of reasons that companies would like to take our money. We help them not only work with our own healthcare system, Memorial Care, but others. We don't promise contracts, of course, but we have a lot of influence at Memorial Care and at other healthcare systems. So they kind of want our money. And really part of what's going on is that there is currently on the sidelines an unprecedented amount of dry powder in private equity and venture capital funds. So money is becoming much more of a commodity right now, or it is, and it's probably going to change to Ben's point, but for the next 2 or 3 years, there is an unbelievable amount of capital available. So, like I said, we're very disciplined in how we look at and value companies, and we think that because of our reputation, our connection and affiliation with healthcare systems, that we will continue to get good opportunities that can make money.
I would welcome, by the way, either people here in person or people online to send questions through the Q&A. You could do that online, and I'll go to the people here live in a couple of moments. I've got one last set of questions for our panelists, and then we want to make this as interactive as possible. Sharonda is unique as one of my speakers that in almost all of the businesses that she has started, she really does not want to take on outside financing. So it's ironic to me that there's a lot of dry powder on the sidelines, but it just keeps sailing right over Sharonda's head that it's just not something she wants to take on. My question is, as these businesses grow, you need to take on capital in order to fuel that growth. Do you ever see yourself having to take or involuntarily having to take outside financing to continue the trajectory of either CAUSE-EDU or Cupcake Therapy?
So in terms of CAUSE-EDU, the answer would be no. Just because we started out thinking that we need to have this huge budget in order to get started, and it turned out we didn't. I built the platform myself initially for our MVP, and then brought on a CTO who expanded it from there. We had a chief partnerships officer who was focused on working with schools to bring in partnerships. And so we had revenue before we actually had the business officially off the ground and running. And we did a lot of the work in terms of the tech piece ourselves. And then in terms of our financial advisors and all of the people that we brought on as experts, we thought that we had to include them in our budget. And it turns out we didn't. What they typically do is they pay you because they're getting leads by working with your families. And so it just turned into, oh, so that's a line item that we can take out. So basically, long story short, the costs for us to run CAUSE-EDU were lower than what we even thought they were. And so that's why we didn't need to take on funding. The other part of it was we actually had an investor come to us and offer us funding. I didn't even know who this man was, but it turned out he wanted us to collaborate with another company's portfolio. And what they were doing was something that was new that we didn't have enough data on to say that we could support it or promote it to our families, and it turned out to not be a good deal, which we found out a couple of years later, but at the time we weren't sure. And so we're glad that we didn't take on that funding. It sounds nice to say, oh, you have investors coming to you and offering you money, but the reality is, in this particular case, it was not a good deal. And we would have lost a lot of credibility, to be honest, if we had taken the money and endorsed this other company that turned out to not be the best for our families. On the Cupcake Therapy side, we do anticipate that we will take investor funding just because we have expansion plans that are ambitious. We're opening our first storefront in the next couple of months. Our second one, either we're assuming by the beginning of next year or the end of this year. Both will be in Boston, our third will be in Providence, our fourth will be in Atlanta. We already have our plans. We already have the markets for it. And so in order to move as quickly as we would like to, we have to take on investor funding. We have applied for grants and other funding. We received a $25,000 grant from the Boston Celtics and Vistaprint, which is great. They're also providing free marketing and all of this other stuff for us. And so we went that route first, but we do plan to look at investor funding because we believe that it's best for the company.
Excellent. That segues perfectly into my last question from Ben Littauer. Ben, the traditional angel or VC model is we give you X money, we own X% of your company, we need either an IPO or merger or a company sale, in order to get that back. You've been a huge proponent of revenue-based financing now for several years. Could you explain what it is and why you think it's so useful?
Well,
Please.
companies that have a decent margin can operate profitably, and if they don't try to grow too incredibly fast, that can be supported through customers. And if you have those margins, you can pay the investors out of free capital rather than out of the equity of your company. The virtue of this is that 3 years later, if you're lucky, or 5 years later, if you're a little slower growth, you're rid of those pesky little investors who get in your hair all the time and tell you to do things differently. And you paid them off. And one of the downsides of the kind of investing, the equity investing, is it's grow or die, and we don't care which you do. And so a lot of our companies just die, and it's a death of trying to grow too fast, as opposed to a death that was otherwise foreordained. So that's where revenue-based financing comes in. And one of my portfolio companies, by the way, and Sharonda, I'll mention this in the context of what you were saying of your growth. I'm a small investor, early investor in WeFunder, which is one of the Regulation CF platforms. They do support a revenue instrument. And the thing that they've just launched, I believe today or yesterday, is a community funding, which is a new term that they're applying to Reg CF, which really sounds kind of stupid. Whereas community funding is really what they've been doing since they launched officially in May of 2016 when Reg CF became legal. And where I look at it from a consumer goods point of view, or anywhere where you have a dedicated community, you can get them to invest in you, invest in your product, invest in your business, and help you do that without just the financial reward being the only thing they're looking for. They're looking to help you. They build you a group of people who will talk about you. And so it's one of those new vehicles. It's become much more accessible since January 2021, where they raised the limits of what you could raise, and also it lowered the impediments to trying it. So it's an area that's there. Both of these revenue-based and Reg CF community-based funding, I think, are very powerful tools for those companies that aren't going to be unicorns.
Great. Caleb, my last question for you is that it's taken a long time in our country, but diversity, equity, inclusion, social impact investing are now part of the daily lexicon of everything we do, not only from a quantitative standpoint, from a qualitative standpoint. To what extent should a venture capitalist like yourself be willing to possibly provide lower returns to limited partners, but proudly displaying that you have a diverse investor pool, not only a diverse investor pool, a diverse portfolio pool, as well as a social impact set of investors and portfolio companies that you're investing in?
That's a really tough question. Correct. A lot of it depends. I mean, you have your own personal views as an investment manager, and obviously, I feel strongly about many of these issues. But you also have to be respectful of your limited partners and what their goals and objectives are. So I don't think that you have to sacrifice much in terms of return at all if you're really good at finding the right entrepreneurs and giving them the right kind of support and leverage to be successful. So I think that venture capitalists have a long history of investing in unproven people, right? Unproven managers, young people straight out of graduate school. So there's plenty of opportunity to find those right people. I think it's better now than it's ever been. There's a paucity of people at my level that don't look a lot like me, but that's changing a lot at the lower levels. So, and I've backed a lot of women entrepreneurs, Indian entrepreneurs. I've worked with people of color in various roles, co-invested with, and I just see that's going to continue, and I'm glad to see it happen. It's just, but it's going to take time, I think, before we can see it more broadly. But it's happening. So I'm excited about that, and I don't think you have to give up much, if any, in returns to do it.
Well put. Kevin, my last.
Can I just jump in
absolutely,
on
sure.
that, on
Please
the
do.
end of that is the first, I want to commend Caleb. It's a false dichotomy. It's not that you have to give up returns.
And that's why I'm asking the question,
Yeah.
because I think the prevailing wisdom is that if you do X, you get Y, and if you do Y, you get Z. And I personally agree with Caleb. I don't think it's mutually exclusive at all.
Absolutely
But the
not.
average person out there does.
That's the issue. One thing I will point out about both revenue-based financing and Reg CF is that the percentage of DEI founders in both of those is way orders of magnitude more are getting funding through those platforms than from the VCs.
My final question, and then we'll open it up. I also would encourage you to ask questions to our students as well. My final question to Kevin is, what single piece of advice would you give to an entrepreneur now who's starting a company? Not a set of 5, must-haves or 5, pearls of wisdom. What single piece of advice would you give to someone starting a company right now? Thank you. The questions are starting to pour in. I want to start with the people here live, just to try and be fair to everyone. For those of you who are here in person, do you have any questions for either our students or for our panelists, please? Sure. Let me repeat the question for the benefit of people online. When you're talking about social impact investing, is it a nice to have, or is it something that they expect to have? If I'm paraphrasing no problem. If I'm paraphrasing it correctly. Caleb?
Well, yeah. Well, for one, Memorial Care is a not-for-profit healthcare system in Southern California. Pretty much everything we're doing is trying to lower the cost and improve the quality of healthcare, thereby being able to treat more people and do a better job at it. So it's almost central to everything that we're doing. We give away a lot of charity care at Memorial Care, and that's expanding access. So everything we do by investing in companies that make us more operationally efficient, more operationally effective clinically, is embedded, is a social benefit, and that's the primary focus of what we do.
Great. Sharonda, you've got a question for the folks online. It says, when starting a food-related business, it takes a lot of equipment and investment to get the permits. At what stage do you think a business like that, i.e. Cupcake Therapy, is investable by outside people?
So let me say this. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of money to get started. Right? There are commercial kitchens that you can use. There are opportunities that you have to get started without investing in all of those supplies, all that equipment from the very beginning. We actually got started with just basic equipment. We didn't, like I said before, it was a hobby, and so it wasn't like we were saying, oh, let's go and buy, the Hobart, $10,000 mixer. We weren't doing all of that. We started with the basic stuff. We looked at commercial kitchen space before we started looking at getting our own space. And so you don't have to have a significant amount of money to get started. The conventional wisdom is $50,000, $60,000 to get started. We put in maybe a few grand each, and that was it. And there's 2 of us. And then we paid ourselves back within like 6 months. It wasn't really that hard for us. In terms of looking for investments, we officially launched in February last year. We started applying for grants right away. We applied for the Celtics grant in, I think it was the end of June, and just found out in January that we got it. That was just $25,000. So we just started applying for the kind of free money first, but we also had a good amount of revenue. As I mentioned before, our profits our margins were very good. They're very, very good. And that's mostly because we do pre-orders and we do very large orders. And we have like MGH and BCG, the Celtics. We have a lot of clients, Brigham and Women's, a lot of clients that buy a lot from us. And so we were already bringing in money pretty early. We broke even pretty early. 12 months in, we're at 6 figures. Like I said, no marketing, just word of mouth. And we're already at a point where we're having turn away business. And so I think at this point, going for investor funding, with the numbers that we have, with the projections that we have, is a good thing for us, especially looking at the fact that we're planning to open a storefront. We could theoretically do it now with the money we have, but we want to make sure that it's nice, that it's not the minimum, but that's something really nice. And so I guess the short answer is you're ready sometimes before you think you are. That's just the way it works.
Very good perspective. Ben, our next question online is to you. To what extent will inflation stunt the growth of the entrepreneurs you're meeting with for their ability to hire aggressively?
I'm sure it will hamper them. It's going to be a problem down the line. Many of the companies that I'm talking about are not labor intensive. So I've invested in a number of green plays or healthcare plays, oncology, diagnostic. They don't need a lot of people. The people are going to be expensive. We hope that the option pool will cover some of that. So I'm not seeing it yet as an issue, but I'm sure down the line it will be for many of the companies that might be of interest.
Kevin, you have a question. The question online is, everyone's talking about crypto. Do you think it's real from an investment standpoint, or do you think it's a hobby? Do one of our panelists want to take that, Caleb or Ben or Sharonda?
I'll jump in on that. I did say I have a big mouth. I think that there is an awful lot of froth in the blockchain crypto area. I'm highly skeptical of much of it. Many of the things, as a former tech guy, that people say, oh, we can do this on the blockchain. I can say you can do that in a centralized database for a whole lot less money. And the benefits just aren't there. So I am a skeptic. There's so much froth. I mean, I still don't really understand what an NFT is. And even though I've studied it, so it's a great Ponzi scheme. I read the biography of Ponzi recently. It's quite fascinating. But
it is quite. I read it. It is quite fascinating.
But on the other hand, I'm not sure I want to put my money into Ponzi's scheme. So I have not made any investments in crypto other than a token investment, so to speak, in Bitcoin and ETH, just to see what it does.
Caleb, our last question. Sharon, you want to chime in? Then I'll ask our last question of the webinar.
So my brother bought me some crypto for my birthday. It like 7x within a month and a half. So I'm very happy with it.
Lunch is on Sharonda today.
If you get in at a certain time and make sure that you have your orders in so that it sells at certain points. So if it drops too low, you're fine. You take your money and you go. He's made significantly more because he got in earlier, and so there are ways to put in so that you sell when it gets to a certain number, so that way you don't lose money. But there's always a risk, right? There's always a risk of losing. There's always a risk of gaining. It just kind of depends on what your risk tolerance is.
Our final question of the webinar goes to you, Caleb. You mentioned during your answers, there's a lot of money on the sidelines in dry powder. And the person who asked the question said, is that a bad thing?
It depends on your point of view.
What's your point of view?
I think that, at least in my market, there's too much money going in to the space. And it's causing it's really distorting the competition. The market's only so big, right? And if you have too many competitors, it's going to make the prices go down in terms of what each of these companies can get from their customer. And it's driving valuations up, which is because there's only there are only a few really quality opportunities. So when you see that imbalance, it leads to problems. We've seen this before many times in the healthcare investment industry. People get excited because they see a couple of really big winners happen, and then all of a sudden tons of money pours into the space and investment returns go way down. People are investing with unrealistic expectations, and it's tough. So we are going to run into a tough situation. I think I talk to my colleagues in the healthcare investing space every day and the different firms across the spectrum, and they're all really nervous. But we're actually, that said, we can still find quality opportunities. It's just that we might have to pay a little bit more for them right now. And as long as we're disciplined and don't pay too much, we'll end up being fine in the long run by just making sure we're in the right companies.
We actually have one final question from somebody who's here live. What is your question, please? On what? I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear you.
Oh, remote versus,
Got it. Yeah. Sure. What are your feelings of doing fundraising remote or in person?
I joined TBD Angels in the fall. TBD has been around since April 2020, so it's 100% virtual. And that model is so much more powerful from every dimension. Now, TBD Angels, many of our members are very focused on DEI. And so if you are limited to your network in your town, you will not have the opportunities to do the social good that you're looking for. So virtual is here to stay. There are many groups who are still very resistant to it and say, we want to be able to drive over and hit you with a baseball bat at the board meeting. I think that that's a relic of the past. It will take a while to die down. Many of the things that we've been talking about are aspirational here. It's going to take years, but virtual is here to stay. I have invested in companies that I've never met the entrepreneur in person. In fact, all of them in the past 2 years. I have not met the entrepreneur in person.
Before I turn things over to our CEO, Qodeo CEO Simon Glass, for closing remarks and our lottery, on a personal level, I just want to extend a thank you. We will start with our panelists, Kevin, Caleb, Ben, and Sharonda. I know at least, Kevin, you and I have never had the opportunity to meet in person, but I know how busy Caleb, Ben, and Sharonda are on a daily basis. So again, thank you for your candor, thank you for your time, and thank you for your willingness to share. We really appreciate it. A huge thanks to our 5 MBA students this year. It's been a lot of work. I'm the first to admit that. I'm really proud of you. As you guys know, I do a lot of experiential learning work. This project in particular requires a lot of time because of its number of moving parts, whether it be interviews, whether it be number crunching, whether it be writing and reporting. I just want to say to the 5 of you again, congratulations on a job well done. Really impressive work. And finally, to CEO Simon Glass, we wouldn't be here without you. It's been a heck of a exciting 3 years. We took a year off in the middle because of what was happening with the pandemic, but we wouldn't be doing this without you. And thank you for giving our students and me personally the opportunity to apply, in my case, what I'm teaching and what the students are learning in the classroom to real world situations. And we're so excited that you have closed your fundraising fund. Qodeo is doing so well, and we sincerely wish you the continued best of luck.
Thank you very much, Greg, and thanks very much to the panelists who all did a fantastic job today. Such a diverse kind of group of entrepreneur, advisor, and different ends of the investment spectrum. Thanks also to the MBAs who've done a fantastic job this year. It's been difficult because we usually do our interviews in person with VC and PE firms because we actually want to get underneath the skin to understand and eyeball those VCs and how they operate to be able to translate information to our system, which crunches that kind of data through the algorithms. This year we've had to do a hybrid, and the previous year we had to do all online, which was a difficult challenge. one of the challenges I think has happened for entrepreneurs in the last year is with the virtual side of things. We're a virtual operation, so we can shortlist virtually for you who you should speak to. So you save all that money and time in the first part of the process. But I still think the pitch is probably more of a hybrid type of approach, which is people who are obsessed by the pitch, but you only get the pitch once you've gone through all the hoops beforehand, which includes shortlisting, finding out who to speak to, and then speaking to them in some kind of way. And I think what's happened, as we see even in our research projects of last year, is access to VCs become harder. Access to everybody's become harder because at the beginning of the pandemic, when Zoom was new and everything else was new, it was all kind of exciting and different. And now people are very jaded. They cancel things, or they just can't. They give a very limited time slot. And when you are, I worked in VC, 2 major VCs in the UK, one of which was in fact Arm Holdings and other things like that. So we had some great success, but we got to know the entrepreneurs. And there's this weird tension between understanding the entrepreneur and beginning to be able to meet them, etc., in some kind of format. And yet what the pandemic has given us the opportunity to do, and what Qodeo gives the opportunity to do, is to find entrepreneurs from such a different kind of series of backgrounds. And then how do you tweeze those two together is still something I think hasn't quite come through. So one of the things that came up on the panel before was about the wall of money, and there are booms and busts in the venture industry. I worked in the venture industry during 2000 carnage that occurred, and great businesses didn't get funded. It's not just about quality. Great businesses fell by the wayside because of general trends. My personal view is that early stages of what we're seeing valuation-wise are actually rising still, particularly in the US. Series B and C's come off a bit, probably because it's close to exit, so there's Series D, E often close to exits. The issue is going to be exits for later stage businesses who've already gone through the hoop and been sort of in portfolios for several years of VCs. But that may come inside different diverse ways. There's a lot of appetite in Asia to buy American businesses, for instance. So maybe more trade sales might occur rather than IPO. And just because the IPO market has fallen recently, I think that's a bit, actually, it's cart before the horse. It's the wrong way around now, because people are thinking it's back to the old world economy. But the old world economy is far more effective. So we're seeing mid-market entrepreneurs and people in the food industry and other kind of industries like that, far more affected by supply chain. Effectively, supply chain is irrelevant to online or tech businesses. The one thing that's happened is the rise in the cost of tech staff. So you can spend up to $112,000 per coder, per engineer, whereas only a couple of years ago that person may have cost $60,000. So that drives up the need to raise more finance at the time there might be compression on what the funding options might be for investors. So we see lots of kind of interesting trends going through Qodeo. So we encourage people to read the reports. Everybody who's attended virtually and in person will get copies of reports. I want to give a special plug to not just to the fantastic investor panelists, but also Sharonda. Sharonda's on our advisory board and is a fantastic African-American entrepreneur. We put out a blog yesterday or a few days ago, about challenges faced by African-American entrepreneurs in the US market. I encourage people to have a look at that. It's a fascinating thing. Now, Sharonda, in one of her businesses, makes cupcakes. There are cupcakes available and catering available at the back of the room for those who are here in attendance today. But we're also going to do a prize, a business card lottery. So for anybody who's here in person, I'm afraid we can't help people online because they can't walk away with cupcakes. But there's a tray of these fantastic cupcakes, and they're not just cupcakes, are they? They're vegan. They're not. You can make all kinds of different versions.
Well, so they're all nut-free. We're 100% nut-free. We have a dozen that's regular, a dozen that's gluten-free, and a dozen that's vegan.
So we have a tray of one of those trays of cupcakes is the 2 prizes from a lottery draw. If Monica, our data manager you spoke before, can bring up the bar, I'm going to get Sharonda to choose who the winner is. And there are 2 prizes. You get a year's free subscription to Qodeo if you're an entrepreneur. Of course, you're a VC. We know VCs are cheap, so they have to pay. And if you're in fact, there's a paucity of cards there. So somebody's going to be rather lucky to. There's a lot of people online, more people online than offline today. So somebody's going to be the lucky winner in a second. But you win a year's free Qodeo access, which is worth $99. If you're one of the VCs who happens to win today, I know one of the VCs is cardless today because he's too trendy. So he's not going to win any cupcakes today. But you win both a year subscription. If you're a VC and wins, we'll give you a free subscription for a year to one of your portfolio companies. If you're an entrepreneur who wins, you win a year subscription plus a tray of these fantastic cupcakes. And for those who attend here today, we have them available to you as well. We just want to say, by the way, before we forget also, that thanks again to Questrom, Greg, and to the staff and students here. We intend working with you guys again. This is incredibly hard work on all sides, but the report and the outcomes and the insights are fascinating. We'll be talking more about that. So just let Sharonda do the choice.
As you're doing that, by the way, I also want to send a huge thank you to our technical team.
Yes, absolutely.
We spent a lot of time trying to get everything right. We're not perfect, but I think we've got 99.5% correct. So huge thank you.
Thank you very much to Randy and team. Thank you. And to Monica, of course. And to welcome Taylor here as well. He's from Georgetown University. He's flown up for the day. Who's our Georgetown Venture Fellow who's joined us today to see this event today. So churn through. So the winner is Chris Byers. Is Chris Byers here? So Chris, you win so you're an entrepreneur? You're a VC. Well, you're a cheap guy, but we'll you have to part with some of your cash as entrepreneurs. You'll get a free tray of cupcakes to enjoy with the Qodeo logo, so you can munch away with the Qodeo logo as you think about us, and give one of our free subscriptions to one of your portfolio companies. The other thing I just mentioned in passing, I know it's a bit naughty for those who are online, it's a bit of a cheeky one, but anybody who's a student here at Boston University, so one of the things we do for the student staff of the business schools, universities, we work with 30 schools around the world, we give you free access to Qodeo for at least a year. And there's going to be a new researcher-only version which comes out in a few weeks' time also we're going to give you access. So if you're interested in signing up free to Qodeo as a member of the student body or the staff body at Questra, please let us know. That goes automatically to our alumni. You're now alumni, the former students. And I thank very much everybody who's been involved today, and I thank particularly the panelists who've made an amazing amount of time and effort and insight available, and to the student staff. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event, probably with Taylor in the back in Georgetown in a few months' time. Thanks very much for your time today.
At this point, we are going to encourage people who are here to do some informal networking. I know our panelists have to get back to work, but if you want to introduce yourself for 5 or 10 minutes, thank you for everyone who has showed up in person and online. Thank you.